Yeah, there's dogs, there's barns, stuff that I am painting in a very realistic way. That's a whole different um, attitude that I usually have with that. And I usually don't have help with the muse with anything like those dogs. I'm looking at something and I'm copying it. So as long as I'm copying something, I don't ever really feel I've got that outside help. But on other things, now those were also I was copying, right? But when I was the little girl with her dress held open, that was taken from both of these were taken from photographs. And my intention when I started off was to put the background that was in the photograph, which was a garden-like scene or whatever. And every time I started that, it was like somebody grabbed my hand and said, "No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do something else." And I was like, "What?" So I hesitated and hesitated and hesitated with both of those little girls on what I was going to do with the background until this just kind of happened. It just fell into place. And it was not what I had planned at all. I had planned on putting, a kind of a detailed background in there that was realistic. These two paintings down here are the most recent I just finished. The one on the left um, was one I had done trying to follow her instructions of what this client wanted. And I think it came out fine. I really like what I've done on that thing. When I did this painting, I prepared two canvases, the backgrounds for two. That way I thought if I screw one of these up, I'll just have another background. I won't have to back up. So on the right, the one that she's partially nude, that's the first canvas I started. And after I did her face, I realized, oh boy, this is way too small. It's not going to work. I've got to get her face larger so her shoulders will kind of go off the canvas. So I moved to the canvas on the left and worked on that until it finished and delivered it. And after that was gone and done and paid for, I went back to the one on the right there, the one that's partially nude, and all that was a face with hair on that background. And I put nothing else in there. Well, I was planning to just use that as a practice canvas. So I started cleaning my knife out on that canvas, just wiping stuff off haphazardly. Like the first thing I did was her hair. I had a bunch of white left on my palette, so I just kind of took the knife and just wiped it over her hair. So most of that I was intended on just painting over and doing another painting. But as I went along with that, the muse comes along and says, "Wait a minute, you got something here. Don't cover it up. Keep her face. Do this." And so again, I just kind of unconsciously started cleaning my palette out on the canvas. And if you'll notice closely, her face is done very fine, and the rest of the painting is done with a palette knife, just wiping paint on the canvas. And I wasn't really sure I liked um, that contrast. I thought it was too much. And every time I tried to take my palette knife and go over her face, I was just stopped. I mean, a voice in my head said, "Don't do that." And then I realized, like a day or two later, because when you come back and look at something later, you get a whole different perspective. I went, yeah, I'm so glad I didn't do that because I really found that what I've got right there is good, and I don't think I can improve it. So, depending on what I'm doing, um, it really depends a whole lot about what's going on in my head and who's helping me.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder about the overlap between, I think creativity kind of defines itself across all the arts, including writing. Seems to me there are a lot of similarities, isn't there? So if you want to comment on that.
Let someone else comment because I don't understand it, to tell you the truth. I don't, it's there's a lot of mysteries here to me with all of this. Um, one thing that I wanted to say to it's not know if it connected to your question is that I believed for a long time that all schools should be art schools, all of them, because you have to learn measurements and math. You have to learn to read the instructions on your paint can. There's a lot that you'd learn in an art school. You don't need anything but that. And people who have an appreciation for art, kids in particular, are far less likely to torture an animal or do anything else stupid like that. So um, art to me is the only thing. It is. It's the only thing. I think it can save the world. It can save. It's therapy. It's we're all creative. We're all artists. We're all creators. We judge ourselves sometimes too harshly and say, well, I can only draw stick people or some other
True,
silly thing. But that's
true.
not true at all. We're all creators. And most of the time, we're awfully hard on ourselves about what we create because we judge it against other creations. And if I judged my stuff against, Leonardo da Vinci, I'd probably never pick up a pencil again. Um, so I'd like to see people kind of get over that and make art a central part of everyone's life, not just art, but creation and creating, whether it's creating dance, music, sculptures, whatever it would be. I think we'd all be a lot better off in society if again, everyone went to art school.
I'm struck by one of the pieces that I saw of yours, Steve, and that looked like it was an interpretation of the Klimt portrait of the Kiss. Did I, is that accurate?
Yes.
That one, that the a print of that hangs in our bedroom, supposedly for inspiration. Sometimes, sometimes not. But your particular rendition is a little different. I was wondering if you could talk about why you picked that and what it meant to you.
Well, this is what happened with that. You see here behind me, this poured piece. I don't know if you can see behind me much. Can you see that thing by
Yeah.
back here? There's also a piece hanging in Michael's house that he worked on that I showed him how to do. Well, a friend of mine showed me a technique of mixing oil with paint, with water paint, water-based paint.
Hmm.
The effects you get when the oil and the colors mix or attempt to mix. He showed me this this uh, this phenomenon of having the oil and the paint work together and let the universe and the nature take its course and move stuff around the way it's going to do. Gravity it takes over. So he had shown me this technique, and so I started playing with it. These three pieces right here are a good example of what you can come up with. And if you get real close, it's just absolutely mind-blowing the detail, even whether you take a loop and get in there and the details just like looking at it through a Hubble telescope. But if you get across the room and look at the entire painting, you also see something. Everyone sees something different. Uh, the one at the bottom is the only one here you see that's the whole painting. And what I did is after I mixed these colors, I mixed the colors individually. And after they were all mixed individually, I poured each color into a bucket slowly, trying to get them to layer.
Hmm.
And sometimes it would layer beautifully, and sometimes a paint would go right to the bottom. But
Hmm.
regardless, I would put all of the mixed colors that I have in one container slowly, trying to keep them separate. And then I would look at the piece, have a canvas on the floor, and I would lean over that canvas, take and hold my breath, and go one, two, three, and then just pour and move my hand.
Hmm.
Motion, a lot of motion. Got to keep moving, moving, moving. Well, I did hundreds of these, and of course, every one came out totally different.
Hmm.
But what I've fell in love with was number one, you see something from a distance, you see something different when you get closer, And the closer you get to see even more, and you can put your eyeball an inch from the canvas and see something completely different than you did when you walked in the room. And everybody saw something different within there. I see fish, I see birds, I see things swimming. And I love that people got to make their own story. So after I had done a couple of these pourings, I thought, how else can I use this? And in the Klimt uh, painting of the Kiss, the garb that the people are wearing, the robes and the clothing on those figures were done with gold leaf and actually painted on there very delicately. It's an incredible piece. But what I had planned to do was to paint their faces and then pour the clothing part section, the cloth, and hope to get the kind of reaction I get as you see in these samples up here. And if you look at the piece, the kiss that I did, which I think is called Another Kiss, it did somewhat work for me. Of course, it's out of, once you pour, it's out of your control what the colors do. So it's just again luck if it comes out good and bad luck if it doesn't. You don't know what's going to happen, and it's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get until you pour it.
I see it, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat. Nice effect.
Yeah, well, again, I didn't want to do this over and over and over, but if I would have, I know what I've done different. But yeah, I tried to use the pouring technique, um, and then I painted over top of the pouring technique where where I needed to. But
That's nice.
yeah, it kind of it sold quickly.
You get the sense of two separate garments, you know.
Steve, if I can interject with the thing that Dave Pistolsell was talking about, the crossover between various media, whether it's writing or dancing or graphic art or music or whatever. But there's also another aspect. When you're painting, you have a combination of your artistic vision, but also a control of the craft. Now, what you're talking about with the pores, particular, but also in certainly in the rest of the painting, there is a craft that you have to master in order to be able to express yourself. In the same way a writer has to have a vocabulary before they can put together sentences and paragraphs and novels, you have to have a technique that allows you to put on the canvas what you intend to put there. And how much of your time is focused on the craft of what you're doing and how much on the vision? What's
Mm.
what's the relationship there?
Great question.
Oh, I don't know how to answer that.
Does the craft come naturally to you? Is
Yeah, I was
that
going to say the craft kind of came naturally to me going way back when I was a young man. Uh, the craft is something I didn't have to work on though. It didn't. I mean, it came easy, but it still took time. My mother spent so much time with me when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, showing me how to draw faces. And I don't know how many hours we spent in over a couple of different years. At times, we'd sit at the kitchen table, and I was drawing all the time. And a lot of times she would sit and watch what I was doing and then give me a lesson, so to speak, and the way she would draw. And she had some talent, my mom did, but she showed me how to draw faces in particular and showed me the mathematics of it. You know, the eyes are, if you draw an oval for the head, the eyes are right about in the middle of the oval, not at the top, not at the bottom, basically seen. And so I got an early start on that. It came fairly easy, but I practiced a lot uh, to get to where I am, of course. Um,
you have some obvious different styles in your painting? Some are very, not only the contrast between realism and expressionism as styles, but the paints you use, the techniques that you use, the brush strokes, all of those things. you seem to be exploring several different styles. And I'm wondering, is
Yeah.
is that an attempt to master the media, or is the style you use what you think is appropriate to the message of the painting or the
Well,
content?
I think you're thinking too deep into it. To me, it's just being fun and it's a challenge. I I probably have a style, but I've never tried to develop it. A lot of artists have a style. Matter of fact, when I was going to galleries, they say, "Oh, I love what you do. I need 40 of these." I'm 40? You out of your mind? You think I'm going to paint 40 barns or 40 dogs? No way. I do two or three things, then I move on, or 20 at the most. A series of 20 something, I'm usually done with it. But I've always had a curiosity that, number one, that's a challenge. Can I do that? Number two, it's like song lists. You don't want every song to sound the same. There's a lot of artists out there that every damn song kind of sounds the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want that. I want to go from jazz to pop to rock to rap. I like the variety. I like to explore the variety. I like to see what I can do with each style that I encounter, whether I see it in a book or whether I see it in the gallery. I'll spend some time in Speed Museum and I'll come back from there and I'll see something there that will inspire me to go in that direction. Can I do that? Like the cubism stuff. I did a lot of cubist stuff. So I look at it as number one, as a challenge, just to myself, and I'm always looking for those different challenges. One thing that really helped me early on was before I started doing my own work, I started copying paintings, and that was the best training I ever had.
Mm.
Was to look at a painting really close and copy it dead balls if you could, which was really hard to do. Getting the colors right was when it was really hard work. But that paid off in the long run. It showed me how to mix colors, showed me what to do first and second. You can look at a couple paintings sometimes and see what was laid down first and what was laid down second, and what was the last strokes that were put on. So doing paintings and trying to recreate them and copy them to me was all the training I had. And once I had done, a couple of dozen copies, then I started to do my own thing. But I didn't do my own thing for a long time. I was thinking the very best thing is the joy I see in people when I paint their dog, or
Yeah.
the pleasure it gives them is immeasurable. It just makes you feel like you hit a home run in the World Series. It's just a great feeling to see people get off and be that happy, be that pleased, be that satisfied, whatever I say to it. And I like to do that with a lot of my art, not just with the dogs and the pets and the children, but with some of the other art that I've got. I've always wanted to make it not just fun, but make it and whimsical, but it make people happy. Makes something that people will smile. They'll look at that and go, "Yeah, that's upbeat." Um, you look at a picture I did of Big Rock, for instance. You know, yeah, it's nice, but it doesn't move you. I love doing stuff like this. It's relatively easy, but it doesn't make people have the same feeling that the things that they connect with, that they grew, that they are part of culture. Look at the one, Michael. It's Snow White in her mid-30s. One of the paintings I did on the side of my brother's building with the. Did you see the figures up there on the top right? Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. This is my brother's vet building, and I went all the way around it, putting these silhouettes, and people just get such a big kick out of
yeah,
that. I love doing stuff that
me smile.
that makes people happy that they get
Yeah.
involved with. You don't get as involved with a picture of Big Rock. I mean, it's nice and it looks good above the mantle, but I'd rather have stuff that really makes you feel good. The luncheon on the grass. It's because Luncheon with Edward.
Oh yeah.
Recognize that, David?
That reminds me, there's a cartoonist for the New Yorker that his characters have the hair coming off like that. I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember
Well, I
his name.
went to do a lot of very famous paintings, Manet and Monet and Chagall, and I put my own figures in there. And this Luncheon on the Grass by Monet, was just one of them. Again, I had took these religious paintings and took baby Jesus and then the people out of it and put my own characters in there,
Hmm.
but just copied the backgrounds.
Hmm.
Mm, mm.
So they're kind of aliens, so to speak. It's a parallel world
Hmm.
in some way. But stuff like this, people get to there's something there to look at and to make a story of, and to figure out, and to have your own story that you put into that, what you see in it, what it means to you, and that kind of involvement with my art. Same thing here. I use the background of a classical piece and replace the characters. I think it was Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Lamb of God down there,
Hmm.
and put my own characters in there. And again, to me, it's far more interesting. It's not so static, uh, and it allows people to tell their own story or to make up their own story, to put their own words to it. Uh, don't have to get into my head where it was. I want to hear what your head does with it. People don't notice that there's a hidden character over there behind the tree.
Oh yeah.
So I like to, in a lot of paintings, if you look around, you'll see things that are kind of hidden or not
Yeah.
so obvious. So I like to also find things that you discover. The more you look at something, you go, oh, I never saw that before. So it gets you to come back and look again and again and to tell, what does that mean to you? I know what it means to me. And but it's the most important thing is what does it mean to you? What do you see in that? It's called Snow White in her mid 30s. And, and yeah, I love to do paintings that cause joy and happiness and some kind of pleasure. And I've got a cartooning background because all through grade school and high school, I put cartoons on people's binders for
Hmm.
lunch. And of course, Mad Magazine, I lived with Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
So I absorbed, and the comic books from Peanuts to Dick Tracy, there's the cartoons there.
Hmm.
I did a lot of cartooning when I was a kid, um, and which drove my parents crazy. They would say, can't you do something more serious? And I always doing cartoons. This is an album jacket I did for a guy out in LA who's going to be coming to town in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to let all of you guys know when he's here. He sold songs to Diana Ross, and most incredible musician I've ever met.
This
Yeah,
is one of my favorites.
yeah.
Uh,
I've
Yeah, I
painted,
appreciated that too.
now I've painted this many times. Not exactly the same, but the same kind of scene. And the
hmm.
reason is my grandmother had a camp at a summer home on the river down where the Salt River pours into the Ohio uh, Point, right on the river.
West Point.
And in West Point, there was a sidetrack where Gandy dancers lived. These are the guys that straightened the tracks. The tracks going from down the bottom of the hill up to E-Town wound back and forth, back and forth. And that winding track had to be straightened all the time because the train would move it off the gravel. So
Hmm.
there was a team of men who literally day after day straightened the tracks between the West Point and up at the top of the hill at E-Town. And they had their camp down there by the river where it was a sidetrack. And when we go by in the evening, when we were leaving at times, I'd see these guys out cooking. They had obviously a pit barbecue thing going on, and I see them playing with banjos and guitars and making music, and it just looked like a great little community of mostly, I'm sure there were men, but my grandmother would say to us if we misbehaved, and I'm talking about when I'm 7 years old, 8 years old, she'd say, if you don't behave, we're going to sell you to the Gandy dancers.
Oh my God.
My little brother and I would go, really? That sounds great. I got to sleep in
Yeah.
the caboose. We talk about where we're going to sleep in the caboose. You kidding me that you think you're punishing us? Are you kidding? But going past their camp, so many times and seeing these guys, and of course, in my mind, they just had the life of Riley.
Yeah.
And so it was a dream that I've always had and I still close my eyes and see us going past their camp. A lot of times they had two or three cabooses or caboosei. Uh, and so that was one thing that I've done many times. And that's probably one of my favorite pieces, one of my favorite subjects, I guess, because of that. And I don't know if you noticed with the smoke coming
Yeah.
off the fire matches the calendar on the wall inside.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, when you look again, things you find when you look at paintings, if you
Oh,
go
yeah.
close, you'll see that
Yeah.
figure is on a calendar on the wall, a
Yeah,
girly
right
calendar.
here.
Yeah. We
Hmm.
know what's on that guy's mind.
Yeah, and the subtlety in his eyes here is what have done it, what got me. It's like, oh, yeah, he's seeing it.
He's
Uh,
dreaming.
uh,
The lady with the piano.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, huh.
that was something I have no idea where that came from. It's one of these things. Again, the muse was working with me, and I guess it was a piano player at some point.
Roberta
Because,
Flack.
yeah, but
I
no,
like the way the key engrossed in the keys, literally.
yeah.
yeah, but I have no idea where that came from. I
Hmm.
started off with a whole different idea, and but this is what ended up, and I'm going, cool. I did that, really.
Yeah. One with the music.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Are her fingers in an actual chord position?
No, I didn't try to
Okay, I was just
consider
curious.
that. I want them to be distorted enough that it
C
probably wouldn't.
minor on the right hand. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of stuff doesn't have to make a lot of sense. That's another thing that I had to get over when I was a child, is that the sky doesn't have to be blue,
Hmm.
and the flowers can be bigger than the house. Um, and that works once you eliminate the rules that you set with yourself. But
Yes. Yes.
letting things happen is kind of what I really love is when things just start happening, and they don't happen until you start. But same thing with writing, you were saying, you've got to write a couple of things down and prime the pump, so to speak. Nothing happens until you start acting,
Yeah.
and you might not know where you're going, you might not even like where you're going, but you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep moving to prime that pump, to prime that muse, to prime that energy, uh, to prime that force within you, I guess. So I force myself to do things a lot. And sometimes it gets going, and sometimes it's like pushing a car that's just out of gas.
Hmm.
Other times you can pop the clutch and here we go. You just don't know what's going to happen when you pop the clutch. But you got to push. Yeah.
Steve, just a quick question. Do you have paintings that you would not let go, that you would not sell or give away? There's something.
No, I don't. But I look at my paintings a lot of times. There's two ways I price things. And I had to be just very honest here, depending on who it is. If I'm selling something to a corporation, I usually don't give them a break.
Hmm.
If I'm selling something to one of Michael's children or one of you guys, it's a different story. So I always take into consideration of who I'm selling it to. And if it's someone who's got a corporation, for instance, or someone who's got obviously the money, I don't try to give them a buddy price. Uh, Yet I'll find someone else that's a friend or a close friend or someone I like that I know don't have the money, but I want them to have art. I want people to be able to afford art. Down here at the very bottom right, Michael, point that up while I talk. It's the pool scene. I did a whole series called The Devil in the Family, The Devil's Family. And I got two of these pieces in the American Folk Art Museum in Atlanta.
Ah,
One was called The 41st Day, and it was a scene of the Ark on the day the quit raining, and there's dead bodies everywhere. And of course, there's sharks and ducks along with the bodies.
mm,
And and the other one was called it was a ticket to hell. And it was a picture of two of a guy behind a ticket window that's from a famous painting. I can't remember what the hell the painting was. I think a Norman Rockwell painting of
mm,
a ticket teller behind the bars selling, I don't know, some kind of transit ticket. But there's posters around this guy, about London and Paris and all that. And I took the whole thing and made him a devil and put, enjoy you're going to hell. So see Satan's
on my
grotto
way to heaven.
appearing, yeah, who's appearing here and there in some place in hell. And but these paintings I did, I was in Florida and I collected canvases at yard sales because they sell
Mm,
them for 50 cents. But I'd turn them around or paint over the painting that was on there. But in this case here, and on most of them, I just flipped the canvas around and painted on the back.
mm,
Painting on the other side of this that somebody did in Florida. But on this side, I used the frame there, the stretcher as a frame, and the back of the canvas I painted on. And the whole idea was to do this on a day. At the end of the day, I had a framed piece, so I could sell them very, very reasonably, if not give it away. But I wanted to make sure that people could afford art, because it's one of the last things that people have on their shopping list is buy art.
yeah.
And it's usually on page 77 at the bottom. Uh, I wanted to make art affordable. And I know when I work on a piece for a month, there's not many people that want to shell out that kind of dough. Uh, but if I work on a piece for an afternoon, then it's easy for me to put that in someone else's hands and hope that they get a great deal of pleasure out of that and a lot of fun out of that.
Mm.
I think I sold almost every one of these Devil's paintings, um, again because they were done quickly and I could sell them cheaply, or I shouldn't say cheap, but yeah, cheap. What's not they're cheap.
I don't think I could afford it, but I'd like to commission you to do Big Rock with your version of a teenage couple hanging out there.
Meaningful, remember?
An
Yeah.
Eiler teenage couple.
There's a lot of
But
pictures of
anyway.
couples in Big Rock going way back to the 1800s.
Mm.
Big Rock's a very, very popular place to have your portrait done, or
Huh.
picnics and weddings and God knows. I've seen so many pictures of Big Rock, um, where people were using it as a backdrop or a prop.
Sure, I did all my wooing as a teenager.
Clearly one of the most famous things in Louisville.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody not knowing, who's been here a good while, not knowing Big Rock
Yeah.
and all of its.
Well, I intended when I did that picture of Big Rock, I spent a year or two taking photographs at every season, waiting for snow, waiting for the right fall colors. But that's the only one I ever got into. And then someday I'll probably get back into that.
I think downstream from there is a bridge on a road over the creek, and it's a nice, beautiful arch.
Yeah.
I was taking a photography class, and I was down there, and the light was such that there was and the water was a mirror image of what, and I took some photographs of that. It's fun.
I was going to ask David Wonderland,
Yes, sir.
did you take an art class with Michael and I with Father Moore?
I did not.
Too bad.
Yeah.
be a whole different person today if you'd have gone through that class.
I liked Albert Moore. He was a great guy.
Yeah, he was. I couldn't remember. There's so many people. I know Pat Ridge was in that class, and um, people from every class at Trinity seem to come to Al Moore's class.
Yeah.
I think I was in the class of analytic geometry at that time.
Are you doing a lot of that these days?
Oh yeah,
You guys may appreciate this. I'm the only one who's from elsewhere, but my town, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, on the plains of plain old Iowa, there was a hilltop there overlooking the Cedar River, and it was a lover's spot. Well, it was legendary. It was called Pecker's Point.
On that
We've all got our traditions, guys, wherever we come from.
on that note,
Heartland humor.
Steve, I want to thank you very much for
Yes, Steve,
doing
thanks.
this.
Steve,
It's
that was
been-
fascinating. It was really
Yeah.
good. Thank
It's
you.
been
Really,
All your
really
comments.
enjoyable, and learning a little bit about your thoughts and technique is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steve, for this.
Thank you. I'll see you guys around the fire as soon as Michael has another meeting.
Well, hopefully, as soon as winter leaves us, we'll